Coming up on Maine Challenge, progressive advocate and former candidate Betsy Sweet. Hello, and welcome to Maine Challenge, the first post-election episode of our program. Today, we're very lucky to have as our guest Betsy Sweet, a progressive advocate and former candidate. And Betsy is all over elections and policy, and it's really fun to just talk to Betsy. I served in the legislature for 8 years, and Betsy has served as an advocate at the legislature for
almost 40 years.
40 years.
I started when I was 3. Thank you, Chuck. It's so nice to be with you again, and to be at least on the other side, mostly on the other side of this election.
Yes, as we record this show, the election is 2 days behind us, and we still don't know all the final numbers for the presidential election, but the elections in Maine are pretty much settled. Obviously not a grand slam home run, but not bad in some places. Any thoughts?
Well, I just think this election was incredibly troubling on the national level. Surely the fact that this is this close an election when we've had 4 years of someone whom I think, not just in terms of his, let's leave policy aside for a minute, although that's critical, but just in terms of his character and in terms of how he comports himself as president, is someone who I think is just unacceptable. And so to see that half of Americans, or roughly, not quite, Joe Biden has a big popular vote lead. So I think that that's troubling. But I think there's some really good things, so more record number of turnout, record turnout among young people, increased turnout among people of color. I think we see that part is a good thing for our democracy. So I'm trying to figure out where the silver linings are, and I'm looking pretty hard.
Hopefully we'll find a few anyway.
Yes, hopefully we'll find some.
Did you, now many of our viewers will recall that you ran in a primary for the United States Senate campaign this year, and Sarah Gideon was the final winner.
Yes.
Any thoughts on that race? What you might have done differently? It almost seemed like Colin's victory was inevitable. There was no lack of money.
No, there was no lack of money. And certainly one thing we know is that polls are wrong, because no poll ever showed Susan Collins with more than 50%. And I think that, I want to look at the broader picture for a minute. There were a number of races around this country that the National Democratic Committee put its weight in the primaries. And it was mostly to snuff out progressives. It happened in Colorado, it happened in Kentucky, it happened in Iowa, it happened here. And we lost every single one of those races, except for Colorado, where and I think Romanoff, who was the progressive, would have won that race as well. So I think that it's a mistake. I think nationally, and I think that we see this on the presidential level too. I think it's been a huge tactical error on the part of national Democrats to not talk about issues, to decide we're going to play it safe, we're going to play it easy, we're going to raise almost $1 billion, right? So you're right, there's no lack of money. We're going to spend it on the same thing we've spent it on forever: negative ads. And how many flyers did you get in your mailbox in the last couple of days, right? 10 a day. Just absurd, stupid in my view. And so I think that there was an opportunity, and that's why I ran, to do this differently. And I do think Susan Collins was beatable. Look at the numbers, Chuck. Biden won by double digits in Maine. Shelley Pingree won by double digits. Jared Golden won by 8 points in Maine. And yet Susan Collins won. Yeah, in the second district. So there was an opportunity there and I think that, this whole thing of Washington coming in and deciding what they know best, and I put it on their shoulders. they've got to let us go back to local politics and state politics, because I think that Maine people know best. And I think that had Maine people been the people running this election, it would have been different. And I think the other thing is that nationally, and Joe Biden did the same thing, they didn't want to talk about issues. They wanted to stay away from issues. Don't talk about it. And people, everyone I talk to, who's not a political hack and interested in the, horse race, wanted to know, what are you going to do about COVID? What are you going to do about the economy? What are you going to do about my healthcare? So, and I think it was a tactical error to not talk about those things. So that's obviously my opinion. And it's, but I think, let me just say one more thing, which is, if you look around the country and in Maine at the referendum on policy, progressive policies won everywhere. In Florida, they voted for increasing the minimum wage by 22%, and Biden lost that race. How is that possible, right? It's all, it's just, yeah.
And Portland.
And look at Portland. And Portland passed these incredible band of people's referendums, and Collins did way better in Portland than we thought she would. So I think, to me, there's a message there of A, what people are hungry for, and B, what we have to start talking about in our elections.
Boy, I couldn't agree more. And I want to yell bravo, but I don't think that'll do much good. What, in your opinion, are the core issues that progressives should be focusing on in this new world, in the new reality?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, I like to think about what we're for and not what we're going to have to defend against. But I think, number one is healthcare, and that relates to COVID. But, people, I saw on election night, I saw the most amazing poll on Fox News. Okay, now I'm not a big Fox News watcher, but Fox News did a poll on healthcare. And if you took strongly agree and somewhat agree, 72% of Fox News viewers believe that we should have government-sponsored healthcare. Wow. This insurance industry, our healthcare system is broken. COVID is bringing to light all the problems, right? In all kinds of ways, but certainly in our healthcare system, even the development of vaccine. When we see that, the vaccine that's going to cost pharmaceutical companies 7 cents, to make, or now they're talking about charging $300, $600 for a vaccine. So it's not an intellectual exercise. People feel it every day. So I think healthcare is number one. And I think jobs is number two. But when I say jobs, it's really, how are we going to start to address the income inequality? When we have people in Maine right now who can't eat, can't afford their food or their rent or their heat, and we have the top 5 companies in America who have made $500 billion in untaxed profits during this COVID epidemic, that is huge. And so I think, Chuck, and I'd love to know what you think about it, I still believe, and you might remember I said this in my campaign, the divide is not so much right and left. It's really up and down. It's really about this economic and now political elite and social elite, maybe, that's taking all the resources, all the money, all the airspace, all the media, a lot of the media, except for shows like this, right? And everyone else is falling further and further behind. And if we don't start to address that and connect the dots for people, and shift the focus away from the people who have less than us as being the problem, as opposed to the people who have way more than us being the problem, then I think we're not going to be able to change the political system. But when we do that, I think we can have a populist, progressive surge that will change this country and bring it back to us,
I'll give you a whole bunch of bravos for that speech.
And I don't mean it to be a speech, but you can tell I'm so passionate about it,
That's what we need, and that's what we need to hear. And we have to, I think, keep sort of pounding that, because I'm finding it very hard to be encouraged. I am encouraged by the prospect of a Biden presidency and a Biden-Harris administration. That excites me, and I think there's potential. But we didn't flip the Senate. What?
No, we did not. We did not. And I think, yeah,
Leader
and I think,
McConnell, Leader McConnell knows how to stop things. And I don't know who's going to keep him in check. My secret hope, don't tell anybody, but my secret hope is that Senator Collins will develop more of a spine and say, well, you know, she's going to be 75 or 77 when the next election comes around. She won't be running again, and she doesn't have to kowtow to Trump or
yeah.
McConnell. Maybe she'll come through for us. You know.
Well, yeah, right. We can hope, right? And I do think it's going to make a difference that Biden has that longevity in the Senate. So he has a relationship with McConnell. He has a relationship with Susan, and Senator Collins. He has a relationship with senators on the other side of the aisle. So I think that I'm hopeful as well that he is going to be able to bridge that divide. But I want to say, I want to think a minute about where we find the hope, because I'm with you. You know, nationally, there's not a lot of hope there. And, you know, again, as I said, even though I believe Biden will win, and I'm very happy about that, and worked very hard to make that happen, there's no moral victory in this national election. But where I do find hope is locally. I mean, Maine, our state legislature and some particular candidates did an extraordinary, you know, there's some amazing people, and Lincoln County, right, being one of them. The fact that Chloe Maxman was able to defeat Senator Dana Dow, in a district that has not been Democratic, maybe ever, I'm sure it was at some point, but, you know, and that she ran such a positive campaign.
Yes.
That's the hope for me. That's what people are hungry for. And they showed it with their votes, you know? Yeah. And so I'm very excited about that. And she's not the only one. There are extraordinary people, you know, my friend Youssef, who's an immigrant, just got elected to the Portland School Board. And my friend April Dawn Fournier just got elected to she's an Indigenous woman, just got elected to the City Council in Portland. You know, we see Courtney Allen, who's been an incredible recovery advocate, got elected to the City Council in Augusta. So if you look there really is some great hope, you know, and that's where we got to, you know, that's where I have to find my hope.
There are some great people in the legislature. It's going to be interesting to see if leaders and the rank and file are on one page about taking smart steps. I mean, I think Governor Mills has done a great job, especially with the COVID, but she's really been right on about a lot of things. And I think she's standing strong and she's doing a great job. And I think there's a possibility, I hope for, that the legislature and the governor will work together and make this a really productive 2 years.
Yes.
That's my hope anyway.
I hope so too. And, you know, in my experience of my almost 40 years in the State House, some of the most difficult times have been when the Democrats have controlled all three bodies. Because I think what happens is, and I think this happens way more now than it ever did when you were there, is that now getting reelected starts to drive the policy instead of what needs to happen. Right. Now, one of the things I'm so proud of Governor Mills about is in this COVID, you know, addressing COVID, she has done what the science tells us we need to do. And, you know, she's been getting some political heat from that, but she has done, and that's so awesome. You know, it's awesome that she's doing that. But I think on other issues, you know, the tendency is to say, oh, well, you know, again, what we were talking about in the beginning, to be cautious, to be careful, don't do anything bold. I think the Democrats have this opportunity to do some bold things around healthcare, around income, around, you know, taxes, around, you know, to really do some bold things. And I think that will get them a bigger majority next time. I'm worried that the traditional national wisdom is that's too scary. So I'm really interested and hopeful and think we're gonna have to make a lot of noise about which direction they're gonna go.
Did you find, this could be just me, but I found myself very distressed that, and of course the results, especially in Lincoln and Knox County, were good. but it really bothered me that Republican candidates were not called to account for whether they stood with Donald Trump and the Republican agenda or were they independent. Now, I happen to know Gordon Page, the Republican who ran for the Senate in Knox County, told me that he was all for LGBTQ rights. He was pro-choice. He was, very much what we would think of as a moderate.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wish that the Democrats had pushed him to the wall in the spring, when revealing that would have damaged his standing with the Republicans in Knox County. He wouldn't have had the support that he got if they knew that. And Dana Dow, another case. I mean, Dana is not the most conservative senator. And when I had him on this show, I tried to pin him down on that very thing, and he wouldn't touch it. He talked about state issues, but he wouldn't talk about where he was as a Republican. And I think that's a missed opportunity, not just for the partisan politics, but for all of us who now have to think about where we are going forward.
I agree with you. And I think that's the hard part. And I think I think one of the opportunities and one of the responsibilities we have is to connect the dots for people. Because I don't think you can say you're pro-choice and you support Donald Trump and then you vote for a Supreme Court. No, I don't think we made that case enough. The people who felt it already, we were there. But for people, my daughter canvassed, for the last 3 months of the campaign. And she said, Mom, people just don't connect the dots. And so I had a conversation with someone who was a Trump voter, a friend of mine, and his issue was he was so mad that his neighbor who was 20 was getting nothing and was struggling trying to work, but some immigrant, in his words, was going to get a ton of money. And I said, well, first of all, it's not factually accurate. Secondly, aren't you mad that Jeff Bezos is getting $500 billion? Like, why is the ire directed again at the person who's, is desperate and needs help paying their rent or their food, and not at the top? And I think that is a failure of us. And I think part of it is exactly what you are saying, Chuck, is our failure to pin people down. And, I think we do this negative advertising, which apparently we like. I mean, I hate it. But we don't even do it on the things that matter. It's like, oh, okay, well, if you're going to do negative advertising, then for God's sakes, call people out on the issues, on where they are. Because, I think, and to say you support LGBTQ folks and then you support Paul LePage or Donald Trump, that's not, those two things don't match. Like, you can't, and so I think, and so, yeah, I'm with you.
And I was astonished, speechless, when I saw that someone in the Collins camp, maybe not the campaign, I don't remember, was calling Sarah Gideon out for being a millionaire. Like, Susan Collins is not a millionaire? I mean,
right, exactly.
And Trump is talking about Joe Biden's kids getting unfair advantage because they're related. I mean, this is nuts. And they're getting away with it. They're marching on, and the Democrats, zip, not a thing.
Right. Because we run out of fear, And one of the things that was so exciting for me in this election was when Pete Buttigieg started to speak, because he was the one person who was going on Fox News and saying, you know what, that's a game of gotcha, and you can try and do that, but that's not what American people care about, And I think it's the same thing. It's like, because we don't want to talk about, because the campaign strategies across the country were to not talk about big issues or big policy or bold policy, then what are we left with? Well, we can talk about whose husband took money from the PPP and who did this. I mean, who cares? Like, I just think, it's like, that doesn't matter to me at all, except you're not talking about, and I mean in general across the, let's talk about healthcare. Can we talk about healthcare? So I think that that's, yeah, and heat and prescription drugs and, and not just a bumper sticker version of it. People are hungry for like, okay, let's really think about this, And so I think that that's one of the strategies that's going to have to change.
And climate.
And yeah, absolutely.
If this administration, and I really hope that Pete Buttigieg and Bernie and other people, Elizabeth Warren, I hope they have prominent, if not jobs, roles in the administration, yes, and bringing progressive values and real solutions to the table so that the administration can carry them out. I mean, I don't want Elizabeth Warren to leave the Senate right now, but
no, I don't either. But yeah,
but no, I mean,
she'd be a great Secretary of the Treasury.
She would. So there's so much work to do, and so many things that need repair before we can even start on our agenda, whatever that is.
Well, right.
It's going to be a really tough few years, I think. And
I agree. And I like to think about it as what we did in this election, hopefully, is to just prepare the terrain or maintain a terrain that from which we can work on real issues and build from that. We're not solving huge things, but the terrain is a lot easier if a Biden is president than if, we get 4 more years of Trump. So I think that's been our, I think that's a base from which we can work. And I also think that Biden is going to I think he's going to surprise us a little bit in terms of his legacy and what he wants to have left for him. But I think, I think it really is a huge opportunity and a pivot point for Democrats. I mean, if you look at it at the big picture, that we have a Donald Trump and we have 270,000 people dead from a pandemic because it was handled poorly. We have the economy in the, way down, because of COVID, but, I mean, there's so many, and climate, we're on the verge of a existential, can't come back from a climate disaster, right? All of those things. And we raised more money and we didn't overturn the Senate. We didn't win, we lost seats in the House. And this presidential election is a nail biter. Something is very wrong with the strategies that we're using, in my view. We should have walked away with this and on every level. And the fact that we didn't, I think, is more tactical. And I think also, the fear of people in the political establishments on both sides not really wanting to change it that much. We want to move the needle, but not that much, because everyone who's there got there using the system as it is, right? So, that's human nature, right? So, but I think people are going to have some aha moments, and this might be a pivot point, and that's what we can help them along with.
That's the big hope, is that this is a pivot point. Mm-hmm. Well, we're only got a few minutes left, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. I love to chat with you, whether we're on the air or not.
Anytime.
But I would like to hear, and you can dream a little bit if you wish. It doesn't all have to be grounded in reality, but what's next for Betsy Sweet? You've proven yourself to be a leader and very smart on policy, which I had no doubt of from when we first met way back in the 80s. I have to tell you about that sometime, but not on TV. And what's next for you? What do you see as an ideal role for you in the next 2 to 4 years? Are you thinking elective office? Are you thinking staff job? Are you thinking keep on keeping on?
Well, I don't know. I will continue my advocacy. I care very much about what's happening in the community mental health system and what's happening with the economic divide. So I will continue my role as an advocate on the state level. I'm also very interested in working on democracy reforms nationally, working on ranked choice voting nationally. I think it will open up democracy again. And the other thing that I'm passionate about is working with young people. in my campaign and in all these campaigns, I mean, the big silver lining for me was the degree to which young people are engaged. And frankly, they're going to be discouraged by what they're seeing. So I think to both train people to young people to help them see how they can make change, both policy-wise in the streets and in elected office, and anything I can do to help with that are the things that I'm going to spend my time on. What that's actually going to look like in terms of, and how I'm going to make a living doing those things, I'm not sure yet. But, I think that we have to keep having our voices, all of us. We have to have our voices heard. We need to be out front, and we need to not stop. I mean, we can take a little bit of time. I'm sure everyone's exhausted as I am. But I think, once we start rolling, we've got to really hold leaders accountable and come up with good ideas. And I think the other thing, and this is just sort of more of who I am than what I do, we've got to move back to we from I, I mean, how many people did you talk to and me saying, well, Donald Trump was good for my 401k? Well, most people I don't know don't have a 401k, but it's like, but we have got to get to community. We've got to address racism. We've got to address structural racism and sexism and those things. And I think we have to figure out how to have conversations with people who aren't in our bubble. I don't mean COVID bubble, I mean in our political bubble, right? And start to find those common values. And I'm dedicated to doing that as well.
Well, thank you, Betsy. Thank you for being on the show. I understand we
always
might
a pleasure
you, and that's a good thing. And I just want to say my future is not all that clear with this show, but I want to thank you very much and hope that your voice is heard loud and clear for as long as you feel like sharing your voice, because you're a great leader in our state and a master of policy. And I really appreciate your involvement, and I've been glad to have you on what may be my last show, but also you were my first show.
Yes, well, so hopefully this is not your last, and I think this will be, I appreciate that very much, and you are a wonderful voice as well, and we all just have to do, we all have to ask ourselves the question, I think, what is ours to do in this moment? And however that comes to us, we got to do it. That
is the question. Thank you so much, and thanks to all the viewers on Maine Challenge, and whatever is next is next. Okay,
awesome.
Sarah.
Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Take care.
Yeah.
Show your support for Maine Challenge and LCTV's programming. We're all about community. Please go to lctv.org to make a contribution. Your support makes us stronger together.